All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our...
Oh, my good friend from Cincinnati. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so good to see you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Will Wright. I work for the Los Angeles chapter of the American Institute of Architects, and it is my delight to bring to you our recently relaunched City Leaders Breakfast Reception. Our last breakfast reception was with Dana Goodyear, staff writer for the New Yorker magazine, and that was in February before sort of the ground shifted between or below our feet. This breakfast series is supported with a generous sponsorship from SOMAS. And what we're trying to do with this breakfast reception is bring together all the various organizations, the entire alphabet soup of organizations that deal with the built environment, from the AEC industry. Today we are featuring Pamela Brief, who is the outgoing president of the Southern California chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. One of the ideas and opportunities here to bring so many of these organizations together is to really explore the multidisciplinary aspects of our built environment and how we can build trust in our society with spaces that are healthy and humane and dignified and restore the gracefulness of the ecosystems that make life bearable, but also make life enjoyable. And so with that in mind, I once again want to welcome everyone here. We are streaming this, it's recording, so we can hopefully access and listen to this conversation soon. But right now, I'd like to welcome Pamela Brief, the outgoing president of the Southern California chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects, ASLA. Thank you, Pamela.
Thanks, Will. And yes, that is a mouthful. I agree whenever I have to say that entire American Society of Landscape Architects. It does not always roll off my tongue. Thank you very much for the generosity of inviting me here this morning and giving our chapter a platform with your membership. I greatly appreciate that. So just to start, to give you a little better idea for those of you that may not know about the chapter, we cover a large area. Unlike AIA LA, although we are in the LA area, we cover LA County, Orange County, in Imperial County, Riverside County, and San Bernardino County. We're Inland Empire. And we're all the way up to San Luis Obispo. We cover Santa Barbara and Ventura County as well. So we've gobbled up a lot of the Southern California region. Basically south of us, the chapter, San Diego chapter exists. And then north of us, there's a Northern California chapter and there's a Sierra chapter. So we're a large body in the middle of the state. And I'll talk about some of the challenges of that as I go on this morning, and some of the silver lining of COVID as it relates to the distances and inability to get to one another because of traffic ramifications, and how COVID has kind of helped us solve that this year. So first off, I think important is that a little introduction to who we are. I see a few of the board members on already. And of course, you know, the chapter and the group that we are is super important. As Will said, we have our incoming president who just took over officially as of yesterday, is Carlos Flores. And Dwayne has been sitting as our past president. And he's here this morning as well. Carlos, you want to say hey? And we also have Nicole Volpe on this morning. She's our VP of membership. And we also, we have people in the house end of things, which is the historic American landscape surveys. And that's a very important part of our historical capture. We spend a lot of time in our chapter, and we're becoming more robust in documenting these historic landscapes that are around us. I'll go into a little bit more conversation of the opportunities that we have in the coming years as it relates to House as well. And I would be very remiss if I did not bring to your attention our own Vicki Phillippi, who is our executive director. And she has been with the chapter for decades, and she knows where a lot of the bodies are buried, so to speak. So she helps us out extensively. She keeps the wheels on the bus and is an integral part of the chapter. Baxter Miller serves as our trustee and is our liaison to the national organization. We also have CCASLA, which is our a part of our chapter that deals with just educating us on bills that could have an impact to landscape architecture. They're at every meeting, and they keep us very apprised. One of the things that we talked about this year at our retreat, which was 2 weekends in October, was how with ASLA and that a part of our budget money goes to goes to our organization from what people pay in their overall dues. CCASLA is one of the things, and the advocacy and our lobbyists is what's paid for with those dollars. And so we, and a lot of people in our chapter have no idea of this. They have no idea that CCASLA exists. Maybe they've heard the terminology, but they really don't understand what they do. So one of our charges this coming year into 2021 is to really be more vocal about what they're doing, what bills might affect us, what advocacy the local chapter membership could provide in writing their representatives. And we're really going to be pushing to try to get people more active. And even if they aren't a member of the chapter, kind of giving them a taste of what the chapter does for them, what the community of the chapter is all about, and entice them to perhaps become a member. So that is definitely a big push in where we're going in the year. So in one of the topics that Will presented as sort of things to cover in this breakfast was ensuring and maintaining our industry relevance. And one of the things that we did this year that I think is important to that charge is that we are now allowing all students to have free membership within ASLA. And that is something that was established for the first time this year, and timely. It was already planned for prior to COVID hitting. It made it even more significant in the fact that students were now remote learning. Their community was taken apart. They were very isolated, back in their homes, most likely, that could have been in another state or even in many cases in another country. So having that free membership and giving them a real community, I think, was a super important thing. And I applaud the national organization for doing that. So then we've taken it onto the local level and really pushed our presidents of the different universities, which is the UCLA Extension, and we have the director Stephanie Landrigan here today, I see, and then USC, who has a graduate program. Cal Poly Pomona has an undergrad and graduate program, and then Cal Poly SLO, and all four of those schools are under our umbrella. So we've really worked with those student leadership groups within the universities and making sure that they're signing up to be members. And in not really giving anybody an out, because if it's free, there's really no reason not to push the button and join. And the hope then is that the students see the community that comes about, and they see the good work that the chapter's doing firsthand, or even better, once they graduate, go directly on and join the board in some capacity in giving back. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that once you get involved and once you start giving back, you get the bug and you continue. It feels good to give back. And the chapter has all sorts of opportunities. You don't have to be in a VP position or, one of the executive leaders on the board. We at ASLA Socal want to provide opportunities for people to serve in whatever capacity they have available. And so that's something as a part of our equity charge, which I want to jump into, that we're purposely focused on, knowing that sometimes by requiring large amount of volunteer time for people could be an inequitable ask. And so we really are trying to provide equitable opportunities for everybody to join, so that increases our diversity. So that's a good segue into one of the things that we touched on, and in regards to our diversity, equity, and inclusion from this year. As we all know, the murder of George Floyd sparked realization, along with other unfortunate murders, such as Breonna Taylor, that the systemic racism that exists within our nation has been going on long enough, and that it's time to make some drastic changes, and that it's time to really acknowledge and look hard and ask the tough questions. So Dwayne has been our advocacy chair for several years, and this gave their committee an opportunity to take a deep dive into what we're now calling our chapter commitment to equitable environments. And I am super proud of all the work that this committee has done. Carlos Flores and Dwayne Border worked very hard to put together a document. And I will say that the XCOM worked equally hard and asked some tough questions in the process of putting together this document and charge that we then took to the board and just voted on at the retreat to include in our strategic plan. So that's super exciting. I'm really happy about that and the opportunities that we're going to be pushing forward. So stuff has already started. It was approved mid-October, and the following week there was already an outreach event. So we've wasted no time, and as a chapter, it's one of the things that we felt really strong about. There were a lot of statements that every organization wanted to put out in the middle part of the year, starting from the end of May, and we did that as well. And we wanted action. We wanted to make sure, because there's times as a chapter that we can talk about things for a long time, and we can talk and try to get things perfect, and then we end up in the midst of that paralyzed and not really taking the action that we want to take. So in this, we said, okay, we got, this is not a complete document. This is a living document. It focuses on advocacy and education, and education of ourselves as a chapter, and education of to our membership. So both ways, youth outreach programs, of course, being led by members that are from diverse communities, so that is further educating us, and of course communication being the key to it all, right? So anyway, there's a lot to it. We are going to be, I know Carlos is going to be, as the new president, sending this information out to the chapter membership, and I know we want to broadcast it on a larger platform. So Will, I'll get with you, and perhaps we can talk about how we collaborate together in those methods. I know AIA LA is doing a lot of good work out, as are the allied professional organizations within LA and within the Southern California region. So we look forward to collaborating with you. I've always said, and I know Will's been very gracious over the years, to invite us, ASLA Socal, into advocacy meetings that he's attended, and giving us opportunities to advocate on behalf of landscape architecture within the city of Los Angeles. And we really appreciate that opportunity. It continues, and we know that having a seat at the table is not something to take for granted. So thank you, Will. I really want to take a moment to acknowledge that, and tell you that we appreciate it greatly. So this advocacy, what we're doing to better landscape architecture, to call attention to racial disparities, what happens in environments in poorer communities, in minority communities, and what has happened historically in our nation with our indigenous population, and being moved out of their native lands into other lands, is something that ASLA Socal is taking a very hard and close look at, a very serious look, and we are dedicated. We know we have a lot of education of ourselves to do, and we're meeting that challenge head on. So that's something that I'm super proud that the chapter's done this year. And I'm going to stop for a moment. I feel like I've been talking a lot. Does anybody have any questions on any of the things that I've touched on so far?
Yes, thank you, Pamela. For everyone on the call, we really do encourage the interaction. So look forward to your discussion amongst yourselves as well. I might call on Dwayne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Dwayne's our chief of advocacy.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say that so much. I know how to type up an agenda for all the great ideas that we put together with our group. That's kind of what my role is at this point. A lot of the hard work is being done by the really excited and I guess I would say dedicated, young membership that we have, and even some of us old guys are pretty excited about it. But we found that the advocacy related originally to professional advocacy. When we first started this a couple of years ago, it was more about being able to connect with AIA and being able to also take some of the work that you guys have been doing, Will, for so long, and kind of steal it for a little bit to get landscape architecture more recognized at the local and regional level. Because as everybody probably knows here that works in LA, it's oftentimes it's architecture and engineering that leads a lot of the efforts and planning. And we felt as an organization and as professionals that landscape architects have a valuable seat at the table as well. So it was about kind of spreading the message about landscape architecture and our role beyond plant materials and irrigation and those types of sort of materiality and kind of specific design elements of landscape architecture, but bring some of our experiences and expertise to the table a little bit earlier on in the process. And so the advocacy was really set up as one role is again professionally within the city and within municipalities and decision makers, and kind of getting ourselves recognized as a profession. The other area we were looking at was education and trying to get a little bit earlier on. It's interesting, over the years it was a focus on early college students and letting them know about landscape architecture, because a lot of folks probably are similar to me in the profession, even that we discovered it very late. We weren't pining to be landscape architects in middle school and high school. We didn't even know the profession existed really all that much. So we were trying to get a little bit earlier into college, and then it became high school, and now we're going to middle school and kind of even earlier. So that was sort of a two-pronged approach we had with advocacy. But then obviously, as Pam mentioned, there's so many issues socially and culturally that have elevated over the past few years that we feel are important. It really made us look as a profession and as an organization and say, well, one of the better ways to grow a profession, just like any other project, is having as many voices and heads around the table as you can. We all bring different experiences. We all bring different values to projects. And so we felt like as an organization, we need to do a better job of that by having more voices beyond the traditional, which I don't know exactly what the percentages are, but in terms of, the profession, it's primarily white men, and then probably followed by maybe white females. And we have a pretty good representation of other cultures, but, we wanted to really, really open it up and try to get those more in balance with one another. And so with the past year of hard work with Carlos and again, some of our other emerging professionals, we've been able to put together a really passionate and exciting subcommittee within the organization. And as Pam mentioned, we're going out and doing speaking engagements with students and connecting with communities and elevating a lot of the nonprofits that are doing some really good work, that are working in parts of our city and communities that are trying to elevate the living conditions, healthy communities, all those things that we value as landscape architects, and bringing that into more of the urban environment of Los Angeles and Southern California. So that's been a really important thing. And as Pam mentioned as well, as soon as we set up the committee, the next week we had an engagement with an organization that works with students in high school and then even in early college. And again, they're looking for information. They have a focus of, well, I'm interested in maybe art, or I'm interested in architecture, I'm interested in engineering, or maybe I'm interested in something that I don't even know what it is yet. And so we've been able to kind of put the landscape architecture kind of stamp on it a little bit earlier maybe than they would have before, to be able to elevate the idea of this as being a profession that is really beyond, again, traditionally what you think of with landscape as it is. So it's been really exciting, and we found as an organization that it was a very, very easy way to engage that next generation. The younger generation, the emerging professionals we have right now, they value so much more than I think some previous generations, the idea of social equity and diversity and inclusion a little bit more maybe than we had previously, or it's always been there but hasn't been given the megaphone that it really needed. And so we're finding that that's
true,
a really,
Dwayne,
really great way to get them involved, is it is something that they're passionate about in their personal lives. And now we're able to give them an avenue that even within their professional life, they can have that come to the fore again as part of their practice. So it's been really exciting for us. It's pushed us, as Pamela mentioned. I mean, as I think it has everybody probably in your personal life as well. So it's been great because, we feel like, just like anything, change is good, but it can be hard. So it's been really great by having Carlos and Pam and the entire chapter really be supportive of it. At the leadership level, we've been able to make some great ground. So we're excited about it and looking forward to it. So
yeah. Our advocacy action plan passed unanimously at our retreat, which was very encouraging. So that was a very good thing. And yeah, we're off and running. Thank you, Dwayne, for that. The passion within the advocacy organization, as you can see from Dwayne's conversation, is awesome and much needed in our organization. And I think to add to that, our outreach in the early grades is just so super important. I think, kids are more likely to know that you can be an architect and not know that landscape architecture exists. I think that's just a reality. And, you know, there are more architects on TV than there are landscape architects. So, and
Pamela, you know I love this topic, and we're actually we have the fortune of having Mike from LAUSD on the call, and I don't know
oh,
if Mike wants
awesome.
to share a little bit about what they're
There you
working on.
are. Hey, Mike. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we have 75 plus engineering and architecture pathways at middle and high school. And Dwayne, you hit it right on the head. These kids, they don't know that they can be architects. They think it's just a class, right? And so we're partnering with Will, who's the most fantastic partner we have. And hopefully we can partner with all of you guys as well.
Oh, that would be great.
Looking to provide opportunities, build the pipeline, and give them experiences that open their eyes to the possibilities of college and a career in engineering and architecture, specifically landscape architecture. There's a couple units that we teach, and the kids go nuts for it. So this is awesome. Thank you so much for allowing me to just listen in to what you have to say.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for all the work you're doing. My goodness. Great work. Yeah. And in two, also with NOMA, and I know specifically with Josh, who is very active with NOMA. ASLA Socal had the opportunity over the summer to do critique on some of the students' work, and that was a great opportunity too. It's just getting in there and having those conversations. And so in that, we were talking about the diversity, the need to educate, all of the stuff that's so very important. And I'll say that, one silver lining out of COVID, which I'm always trying to search for, good things that have come out of this year. And that is this platform, Zoom, and how this has, I know for us at ASLA Socal, so increased our communication, and who we've been able to reach out to this year has exponentially increased by nature of this platform. Not only within our membership, but our outreach to other people. And so that's been a great win. And it is something that we're definitely taking into the new year. Would we all, have gotten up and made it to a breakfast this morning on a Friday morning? Possibly not, knowing that at the end of the day, all those things that we didn't get done at the beginning of the week are still there on the list on, Thursday night when we close up the computers. So it just gives us an opportunity to get together more. We've communicated with members that since I was president for 2 years and president-elect the 2 years before that, so involved in a lot of our programs, I was seeing members this year on a regular basis that I hadn't seen in 4 years' time. So it's a great way to communicate and to keep in touch. And it's a much more, it's often, not always, because of course it's based on needing to have a computer and needing the bandwidth and all of that. But it does open an equity door in a capacity as far as distance and ability to get somewhere and ability to see things now, across the nation, across the world. So I'm super excited about how we're going to continue to use platforms like this and technology to bring us together even more.
Pamela, someone else that we have on the call today, and I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, so if you want to be quiet, that's fine. But we have Lorena from City of LA, and I would love to know from her perspective how AIA and ASLA can be more supportive in her role with the Los Angeles Department of Sanitation, because there's so much going on with how do we deal with our watershed, how do we make sure that we're really making our environment healthier.
Hi, Will. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lorena. Yes. Nice to see your name.
Good to see
and
you
hear
guys.
Your lovely voice.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here this morning. Well, this is a great question that you have. in the past, ASLA and AIA has been involved with a few projects that we have, but maybe I'm this is more of a personal opinion. Maybe we could be a little bit more involved with the process that the city is taking towards the profession, and get the students with LAS, USD, and UCLA, Cal Poly Pomona, USD, and all these schools a little bit more involved with the project. That would be great to see that happening in the future.
Mm-hmm. I know we were involved with the, oh, Stephanie, yeah, I know we were involved with the MacArthur Park initiative, and actually, Will, that's where you and I met. So that's one way, and I think that was super successful, wouldn't you say, Lorena?
Yes, that was a very good partnership between the city in general and the schools and ASLA and AIA.
Stephanie, I think I saw your hand up.
Yes. AIA, actually the licensure requirement is an internship that is actually legislatively, or whatever I shall say, required. We do not have that for landscape architects. And so one of the things that has never really been strong is internship programs with firms for landscape architects, especially in California, especially if they're smaller. There's always a fear. And I think that we really need to look at that. Mentorship is terrific, but dropping somebody into an office is the perfect place to eat a lot of humble pie and to come to realization what you really know and what school has taught you, and the applied science is very different. And I would love to see both LA SAN, maybe even LAUSD, certainly architecture firms and landscape architecture firms invite internships in for our students, so that that relationship becomes, and an understanding of firm life becomes far sooner than it has been coming. Thanks for letting me talk.
Oh, that's a great point, Stephanie. Yeah, I love that idea. And that collaboration, I think, some of the programs, like we were talking, and I know Stephanie and I were talking the other day about that, in the programs where architects and civil engineers and landscape architects students are working together on projects is such a great opportunity. And having those sorts of internships, I think, could be an equally collaborative effort. And I think, on the organizational standpoint, we collaborate in our designs. So it's only natural that we collaborate in our organizations too, right? It's what we do. We're collaborators. We work together, not just in our own little bubbles to get a project done. It doesn't happen just at our desk. It involves so many other disciplines and other professions.
Thank you, Pamela. Anyone else on the call have some ideas on, how we can work together more often? Or, I'm personally curious to know about landscape architecture with regards to technology, innovation, and all of the latest science that we're learning. And one thing that I'm really curious about is, how can we utilize the expertise of landscape architects to really make our public realm healthier? I feel like we have way too much pavement, and I would love to see more unpaved moments throughout our city. And I'm just curious to know, what are some best practices that landscape architects are discovering throughout the world that we could apply here in LA to make sure that we have, healthier street tree, et cetera.
Oh, Stephanie, go. Oh, no, you're on mute now. There you are.
All right. We need to work with planning cities and spaces more, because buildings and the landscape are a fabric, and oftentimes the way planning occurs is you do one lot at a time, and it becomes more of a patch instead of a weave. And so I think really planning is the area where both of us, both of our professions, and including the engineering profession, because, you know, the weave is multi-layered. We go into the earth for our infrastructure. We go up into the sky with our architecture. And then all of this has sort of become siloed. And also, and you see what people call scope creep, but I see it as a reuniting of the disciplines to create the weave that should be our cities. Instead of as competitors, I really see us as trying to find a way to collaborate and to make that work. And if we understand what each other does and do a little bit of it, we're going to be better at doing that weave than not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the diversity, bringing diversity into our profession is imperative, because then you get more voices, you get more perspectives that makes us better. That collaboration, and Will, to be quite frank, I'd love to see us as landscape architects at the table sooner than we often are. There's a lot of decision making that gets done, and then and then we get invited and get to be told about the decisions that have been made. You've been instrumental at getting us to that table in the city of LA, and like I said, I appreciate that. Dwayne.
Yeah, I think to Stephanie's point and to what Pam said as well, we've been fortunate enough to have Will invite us to some of the AIA sessions that you've had with, I remember a few years ago, we did one with, street services, and we started talking about, more ways to increase that tree canopy and increase some of the planting areas. I think probably Lorena challenges every day some of the standards that we have within the city, and I think that's really kind of where it starts. Oftentimes we're working with, frankly, some fairly antiquated, engineered driven decisions as it relates to streets and tree canopy and infiltration. It becomes an issue similar to traffic, where it's about throughput, rather than necessarily about, sort of slowing down and being able to find more efficient and effective ways to do things. But from a city side, I think there's a couple of different layers. One is trying to get beyond, again, these older traditions of streetscape. We need larger planting areas for trees. We need a more diverse urban tree canopy layer. So we need to have a little bit of an ability to kind of explore new solutions like silvacells and those types of things that help with more street tree root structure, but it does have an impact on the engineering of streets and sidewalks. Other cities all around the world use it very successfully, but we've had challenges with getting the city of Los Angeles for years to be able to advance that very simple idea and very simple tested solution. I think some of the other things that we deal with is obviously, there's so much in our street corridors, from utilities standpoint, from stormwater and all those things. I think there's an opportunity for green infrastructure practices to come in. But again, that's going to require a little bit of a change in some of the standards and the engineering approaches that we have. And then I would love at a top level, my dream has always been, we have these urban infill projects that our studio has been working on for, years and years, and I'm sure a number of other folks here have as well. We have certain requirements for landscape and for green space. 25% of a common open space needs to be dedicated to plant materials, irrigated planting, green space. We have, 1 tree per 4 units for residential development. And quite honestly, we end up checking off boxes rather than looking at it as a holistic approach. When we're doing these urban infill projects, quite frankly, to get the tree counts, we're often putting them in very small contained planters on top of a concrete structure, which is good. It's a good start, let's say. But I think there are other ways that we can benefit the green building industry. And that's, again, sort of making it more effective for, green roof technologies, or maybe there's a different way that we calculate the green space rather than just area and tree counts. I would love for zoning or for planning to say, for every urban development, I would rather them say, a percentage of the site needs to be to remain as opportunities for infiltration, direct infiltration, instead of building lot line to lot line with parking underneath, with no area for the soil to actually receive and for the public open space to receive, more successful green areas. So I think, it's big ideas like that at the front end, which really aren't that big, but it's a change in the model, and it affects obviously development costs and everything else associated with it, all the way down to the systems that are approved and that we're able to explore with the city. So that's kind of a rambling answer to
No, that's all good. That's all great stuff, Dwayne. No, and that's very true. I mean, creating amenity decks, although important for the people that inhabit the buildings, they're very exclusive. I mean, they're not public areas. And when we're putting trees on roof decks, we're not providing an environment for the people of a city. And I think there's other means. There's a lot of work happening in educating people on more like kind of like going back to the land, like I was saying, the indigenous practices versus what Dwayne was calling, a more engineered approach. And I think they have real weight and real value. Hugelkultur is a European method similar to permaculture, and it's gaining traction in the city in Southern California. And I'm seeing some really innovative, great methodologies that are starting to take effect. And they seem to always be, they're plugging back into this equity fabric that I was talking about earlier, and so much goes back to that. And I just feel strongly that as we push more and more into, bringing indigenous people to the table and letting them talk about native practices, that we're going to be smarter and better as landscape architects.
Thank you, Pamela. We have Meg Coffey on the call, but before we go to Meg, I just wanted to ask the people, it's either Chicago or Detroit, I don't know which one. And that city allows, if you keep 50% of your lot open to the sky, the other 50% of the lot does not have a height limit. And I think that would be an incredible thing to bring to LA, especially in certain parts of town where that open space would be beneficial. So in the meantime, Meg Coffey.
Yeah, let's put Meg on the spot.
I had raised my hand, so it's actually not.
Oh, you did? Oh, good. Oh, okay. Oh, he's not putting you on the spot. Okay. No. Well, hey, Meg.
Hey. Hi, I am president of AWA Plus D. I'm also an instructor at UCLA Extension Landscape Architecture Program, and I also have my own landscape architecture practice. And I'm also going to be on this very program on January 28th. So I look forward to seeing you bright and early that morning. And I will have actually gotten dressed and looked nice so I can be on video.
Yeah, you'll see Pamela brief on that call.
Yeah,
I get to be you then.
But I just wanted to, Will, what you said was actually a great intro into what I was wanting to talk about, which is that open space is undervalued. And so in terms of development, it is much more profitable for a developer to build a building from lot line to lot line rather than include open space. And so until open space is equally or more valued than buildable space, we're going to have a tough time having any sort of improving our open space and improving our streetscape. So that's one thing that I just wanted to mention. And I think the idea of whether it's Detroit or Chicago of the 50% open space, and then you can go up as high as you want, that's got its own issues, I'm sure, but that's a good start and definitely is going in the right direction, I think. The other thing I wanted to mention in terms of equity is that landscapes are not equitable. They take maintenance and they take money. And so that's why you see that neighborhoods with more money have more landscape and they have more street trees, and they have healthier street trees. So until we've rectified some of the maintenance and municipal money distribution issues, it's going to be difficult for us to have a landscape and an urban forest that is equitably distributed across all neighborhoods. And maybe that's something that you discuss in your classes, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the students are the ones that are really going to take charge and make this change. The generations in the past kind of left a mess for them. But we had a sustainability webinar a few weeks ago, and the kids were engaged and their questions were mind-blowing to our panelists who are sustainability engineers. So yeah, let's start with these 7th and 8th graders and get them through 12th. And they're the ones that are really going to drive the change for the environment and for social justice. I think that our students are leading the way on that as well.
That's really encouraging to hear. Anyway, that was all I wanted to add.
Great and super important and very, very accurate, Meg. I think when ASLA National just had their conference this past week for the year, and obviously it was virtual. There were several meeting opportunities talking about advocacy and how to push forward with advocacy. And I think that's a big component of the equity fabric. We need to be talking to our representatives, and we need to be in there engaged and asking those tough questions about why is the money going, to this neighborhood versus this neighborhood, and how are you going to help to weave a more naturalized and park plentiful fabric in your communities in all areas, so that everybody can walk to a park, so that that people have opportunities. We need to have that voice, and we need to speak up, and it's time.
Hey, I have a question actually probably for Will and for Pam. Will, you know more detail on this, but the AIA has just recently, I think, completed work on its revised strategic plan. And I think that's being voted on here shortly. Has there been anything done to share strategic plans between the two organizations? Clearly, everyone is reacting to the changes we've seen in the last year. But while there seems to be terrific alignment between ASLA and AIA, this could be a way to further that as we look to see what our strategic plan is for the next number of years versus ASLA.
David, that's an excellent question, and you're correct. There has been a working group that's drafted an updated strategic plan, and that will, I believe, go to the board of directors in January for adoption. But the idea of organizations not only sharing their strategic plans once they create them, but perhaps collaborating in the process of creating those strategic plans, I think that's an excellent idea. And perhaps that might be something that can become a thread or a theme that we can visit with all of the other organizations that we'll be organizing these virtual receptions with. But I think that's an excellent, I guess the answer is no. We other than making our strategic plan public or on our website, the opportunity is there for us to actually integrate our strategic plans more readily. I think that's a perfect. What is ASLA Socal's process for strategic plans?
We revisit our strategic plan annually at our retreat. We have a retreat every year. The last 2 years, we've gone up to the UCLA Conference Center up in Arrowhead. So we physically get away from home and out of our environments so that we have dedicated time. And it's a great bonding opportunity. We did it virtually this year in October. We revisited the strategic plan and also folded in the equity action plan into that as well. But I think that's, David, that's a great idea as far as collaborating together on those plans. Even, you know, I would say, like, you know, once something gets developed to a, you know, a pretty hefty extent in either organizations, to sort of, you know, come together then as one of the steps to talk about, you know, where AIA is, where ASLA is, you know, the civil engineering organization and the engineering organizations, interior designers. I mean, everybody within our design realm. If I have forgotten your profession, I apologize. All of us that are designers and creatives, you know, let's get together and do that. I think that's a great opportunity.
Well, someone else that we have on the call today is Ara from the city of Santa Monica, who happens to be the current president of the ICC LA Basin. And Ara, if you have a moment, we would love to hear more thoughts on, you know, perhaps what the strategic plan is that you are putting together. I believe you have your meeting coming up, or not your annual meeting, but Ara, are you on the call to share a little insight on?
Thank you, Will. Good morning, everyone. Ara Sarkisian, City of Santa Monica building official, and I am the lucky 2020 president for ICC LA Basin chapter. Great topic, and thanks for bringing together Will again, and great breakfast. I like it. Wanted to talk about a couple of things. First of all, the development, when we talk about property line to property line, and looking at the history of development of the requirements, we may say it's not, shouldn't be technically driven, it should be planning driven, requiring landscape open space. And comparing with, let's say, LA County, which is one of the largest jurisdictions in the region, and LA City, the largest one, two large jurisdictions. Planning-wise, LA County has regional planning, and LA City, entire LA City is one planning, and except several specific plan areas, entirely like for multifamily development, they are asking for 25% of common open space to be landscape. What does that mean? If you have a high density area and most of the common open space you can push to roof, and as Pamela said, that most of that roof open space is not even used for general public, not even by tenants, and 25% of it will be just planter boxes, and you don't see anything on a landscape on a ground level. From the other side, developers are pushing to maximum, and because the real estate is very expensive, every square footage is expensive, and most jurisdictions want to bring more housing in their area and more business, they are going to push to maximize as maximum as possible. And surprisingly, I would say not much of a planning was, by planning that was done, enforcement of open space than, for example, stormwater mitigation starting 2003, and recently low impact development in both these large jurisdictions, and also other small cities are following their example, requiring water retention. It forces the developers, the owners, bring green space there, whether it's a pond or planter boxes or even water barrels. Somehow they already rooftop landscape doesn't help much for stormwater mitigation. And of course there are issues. You have planning asking for green space, and the civil engineer is designing a planter box which is 4 foot high to retain the water there for a while. And then planner is going to ask the architect or landscape architect that this is not going to work as an open space because it's too high for enjoying that space. So there are issues there, and it will be nice if both landscape architects and architects be part of the decision making when the ordinances are passing in these jurisdictions, to be vocal. And I had so many meetings with AIA San Fernando, AIA Valley, AIA Los Angeles, encouraging to go to these meetings and bring their voice when we are talking about envelope height, chopping the building, the design limitations. Suddenly, actual people who do the design, they are not part of this decision making. And at the end, they come to building department and say, why did you come up with so many restrictions or so many nonsense things? We say, you know, you should bring your voice to local jurisdictions when the ordinance is about to pass. So, we have very respectful organizations here, Landscape Architects, Structural Engineers Association, AIA. Their voice is heard. They should raise their voice. And from the area of the advertising the industry profession earlier, that's also, it's a very challenging topic. For us, especially for when in no school, architectural or construction management or engineering mentions that there is a building official or building plan checker or inspector position there that you can, and we are having hard time recruiting people when construction or the industry or economy is in a good shape. Private is paying so much, so attractive, and young engineers or architects, they are imagining to be designer of a huge bridges or high rises. No one thinks it's that boring job to take and do the plan check, right? When economy is not so good, then we hope that we will get some good quality employees for us, professionals, and suddenly we have layoffs too, and we don't have opening for these good professionals. Going to high schools, going to colleges, asking them to add into curriculum more landscape architectural subjects will help. From my standpoint, I would say building code requirements, planning, there are some, but specifically for building code, I don't see many. We did try to go a couple of high schools, and when they have a list of professions, you may see dietologists, you may see not just medical. In medical field, you will see so many psychologists and all different variations, but landscape architect is not even there. So that's the place to go. And we did the same thing last time we went there. So we want to have a building official, building and safety to be there. And they said, is this close to architecture or engineers? I said, put us somewhere in some room with architects or engineers. We don't mind. But no one knew about that. There is an industry there. There is a profession there. I think with landscape architecture, you need to push a little bit local planning departments to have this open space requirement to enforce strictly. And again, it's kind of like technically low impact development helped a lot. Otherwise, it would be just entire Los Angeles would be property to property concrete, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ara. Pamela, we have a few more minutes here. Any final thoughts as we, bring our meeting here to a close? Thank you, Ara. Pamela, you're on mute.
That was bound to happen to someone. Thank you, Will. Thank you for the opportunity again. Thanks to everybody that that shared or had a question today. It was great having this dynamic conversation. I just ask on behalf of ASLA Socal, if you've ever had an inkling of a thought to be involved in the chapter, or even if you haven't, come to a meeting and see what we're about, or talk to one of us. I just put my email on the chat for anybody that that would like it. Dwayne did the same thing, and join our chapter as a member or as a volunteer. And then I just want to continue the challenge that we as allied professionals continue to collaborate and work together in the city of LA and across Southern California. I think we're stronger, and and better when we put our heads together.
Thank you so much, Pamela, and thank you to the ASLA for everything you do to make our city, more habitable to not only humans but to people. It looks like we have, well, Mike, you're doing a hand applause. So with this, I want to bring everyone to a close. I really thank everyone for joining us. We will have several more programs between now and January 28th, but I do encourage you all to join us again on January 28th, and we'll have Meg Coffey from the Association of Women in Architecture and Design. So with that, thank you very much, and we will enjoy the rest of our Friday. Stay healthy.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend. Hope you and your family stays healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.